Hi and welcome to wrist training while learning about pollarding. So we will always do one exercise to train the wrists, and when I'm going to read from here something to pollarding, I try to learn it and try to be able to memorize it all and try to be able to say and understand what pollarding is, and participating in the exercises as they around it. Let's start with the first exercise. We're having, by all exercises, a good and comfortable stand. We're having the arms by this exercise next to us, the hands form the fists. Now we're bringing these fists down and again up. And we're doing all exercises according to 3 rules. The first rule is that if we have pain at the wrists, that we're stopping immediately. The second rule is that we are going only as far as we can go with a little bit of effort. And as soon as we've reached the point which we could reach with a little bit of effort, turning around and going into the other direction, we are not pushing further. And the last rule, the third rule, is that we don't overdo it. We are not even using our full potential. So that is was the last time of this exercise, which is called spotlight. Now to pollarding. Pollarding is a special kind of pruning. When someone knows what pruning is, we are now wiser if they haven't known before what pollarding is. Otherwise, we know that it has something to do with pruning. Pollarding and pruning have something to do with each other. Next exercise, let's keep the state of suspense a bit running. We're having the hands next to us, again formed to fists, and we're turning the fists now to the inside and to the outside. The 3 rules again. First rule, if there's pain, stop immediately. Second rule, go only as far as you can go with a little bit of effort, and as soon as you reach the point which you could reach with a little bit of effort, you're turning around and going into the other direction. And the third rule, we're not overdoing it. We are not even using all what we are possible to use. So that this was the last time. We are doing quite a lot of exercises, so we don't doing them that long. Now, pruning. Pruning is something, and some type of pruning is pollarding. Pollarding has something to do with trees. I guess we also know something about pruning. The pruning has something to do with trees, but that must not be so. But pollarding has something to do with trees. We have an explanation to what trees are. And that's not just some ridiculous explanation. You maybe should actually pay attention to understand what pollarding is better, and the following bullet points. A tree has a root underneath the earth and the soil, then a big trunk, and at a few meters height out of the tree are branches coming. Out of these branches, even more branches are coming, until there are thousands of bigger and smaller branches which are forming the so-called crown of a tree. So a tree is a trunk, and when there are a lot of roots in the earth, they are holding the tree firm in the ground. And then at some height, not every tree has the same age, not every tree has the same height, but we're taking just some symbolizing standard tree. And when at some meters height, let's say 5 meters height, there are branches coming. And they're going in all directions. And these branches are having then again branches. And so they're first bigger branches, and then smaller. And then they are maybe 10 meters of height with whole branches. So the tree is standing here, it has such a trunk, and then there can be branches which have 10 meters length all together. So that is then called the crown of a tree. So that's the trunk and the roots in the earth and the big crown of a tree. That is the setup of a standard symbolized tree for this example here. And by pollarding, the upper branches of a tree are cut, which somehow leads to the development of a denser head of foliage and branches. Let's skip the second part, what is written here, but the first part is an important one. Through pollarding, we want to know what it is, what it causes, or how it causes. It's not so important that early. So pollarding is cutting the upper branches. So here are all the branches of crown, and when they are cutted, maybe not all, some are sometimes longer there in the hope that the tree does not die if there's some left. But most of them are cut by pollarding. So there's then just the roots in the soil, the trunk, and then there are not many branches, but all the branches are cutted, almost. And that's pollarding. Pollarding is cutting the branches of a tree. It's over the tree of its crown. But we're going to read on what a tree says to this decrownment. The next exercise. Now to the magician. We're doing the same exercise as we had just done with the flashlight, which was the following exercise of the spotlight. Now by this magician, we are having flat hands, and we bring these flat hands to the outside and to the inside. And we don't have to do this exercise so long, because we're directly starting through to the next one, which is the pancake flipper. Flat hands, and now we are bringing them into supination and down into pronation. So we're bringing the palms up to the sky, we're flipping the pancake, and flipping it back again. 3 rules. If there's pain, stop immediately. Second rule, go only as far as you can go with a little bit of effort. And third rule, we don't overdo it. We want to do less when we are capable of doing. So now, and directly through, no, not. First, the next thing to pollarding. Pollarding is cutting the branches of a tree. The pollarding technique of cutting the upper branches of trees is done sometimes when trees are growing in cities to keep the trees at the desired height. That sounds logical. If we cut the top, why don't grow higher? So in some cities where we're growing and we don't want them to grow 50 meters high or in all directions, so we're cutting the branches at the top. Okay, let's go to the bullet point before that and try to understand the second part of the sentence. By pollarding, the upper branches of a tree are cut, which somehow leads to the development of a denser head of foliage and branches. If we cut the branches, that leads to a denser head of foliages and branches. Foliages must be leaves. So it becomes denser. Denser does not mean it is more because we have just cut it, but it can mean that it comes next year, or it becomes just denser. It makes a bit sense. If the branches are coming out naturally in the first time they're coming out, normally, they are pretty wide. And if we cut them now, by the second time they're coming closer together, more dense. They're not branching that far, but it's denser. That is a logical explanation which makes sense. The next exercise, it is the T-Rex in the morning. And hopefully the exercise also makes sense. So we're bringing the hands down and up. And always according to the 3 rules. If there's pain, stop immediately. Counting as far as you can go with a little bit of effort. And third rule, we are not overdoing it. And last time, then we're going on. After the T-Rex has done this exercise in the morning, the T-Rex is doing this exercise in the gym. If you don't have a tennis ball, just do it without one, with a fist. Now, I'm holding the tennis ball like this with the forward fingers, the thumb is more or less nothing doing. I'm having a flat line from the knuckles to the elbow, but I don't think it's that important. And now we're pressing onto the tennis ball with moderate force. And we're releasing again, but only to press again with moderate force onto the tennis ball. Now we're releasing, we're doing it for a third and last time. And press onto the tennis ball with moderate force. And we're switching. Now the other hand. And we are pressing. And we're releasing. And we are pressing again. And for the final time, we are pressing onto the tennis ball. And we're releasing it. In the source, there is some talk about using the removed material to feed to animals. The removed material of a tree is then called fodder or so. So there's a great range of uncertainty in the bullet point, but it seems to mean the following. What the crown is cutted, and they are not thrown away to rot away, but they are taken and fed to animals, and then they are called fodder. So if branches are cut from a tree through pollarding, that is called fodder, and animals can eat it. Something like that. If it is wanted to use the cutted material as fodder food for animals, the trees are cut every 2 to 6 years to have the most leafy material. If someone prefers longer branches for fencing and boat construction, they are waiting 8 to 15 years to pollard the tree. Now, first, we should know better about fodder and what we're cutting from a tree and giving it to animals before we're giving it to animals than just some vague, broad insecurity here in the bullet point. So we're not feeding it to animals, whatever fodder is, whatever we believe fodder is. And the second thing is we're doing the next exercise. And the third thing is during the exercise, I'm going to explain bullet point. Exercise, the frog testing the water temperature. You're having the hand next to you, and when you bring the hands down, the flat fingers, and then up again, with strong fist. So the hands down into flexion, the flat fingers, and up into extension of the wrists and into flexion. So, if we want fodder for animals, we are cutting the tree every 2 to 6 years because then we have the most leafy material. Last time this frog testing water temperature exercise. And if we want longer branches for fencing or boat material, then we're waiting 8 to 15 years. So it makes sense with the thing before, what was said here. We're waiting 2 to 6 years when we have a most leafy material. So if we're cutting it, it grows denser and we're having more fodder. But if we want longer branches, we're waiting longer, 8 to 15 years, and then we're having longer branches for fencing and boat construction. And fencing doesn't mean fencing, the sport, but it means in this context, I guess, fencing for areas to make a wall basically out of wood. And when trees are pollinated, they live longer because they are kept in partial juvenile state and because the weight and windage is reduced. We have to hurry a little bit, I think. Exercise the hands out and we bring the fists to the inside. So they live longer because they are kept in partial juvenile state. So there is all something to do with that they are growing denser and producing more leafy foliage, which is then more amount of fodder for animals to eat. And inside. And done. So they are kept in juvenile state, and because of that they are living longer and producing more leaves. I guess that's also part of it. And to the inside. And that was the quadrangular castle architect. What was it else? Yes, that it reduces weight and windage. They are living longer, also because, so we're having this weight and windage must have something to do with wind. So I guess we are not so prone to be erased by a storm. The age of pollinated trees is harder to specify because we are often hollow, and it's the next one. Species diversity of animals and plants of a place can be increased because more light reaches the ground. Last exercise, it is a crab anxious to a fever. So the crab has the arm on the outside and the hand formed to a fist, and then the fist brought down. And now we're pressing a little bit against it, but very carefully with exercise. So the age of pollarded trees is harder to determine because they're often hollow. Trees are growing each year one ring, so we're having in the trunk there are rings, and so there are fine linears visible, and every year a new one happens. So if there are 10 of these rings inside of the tree, if they are cut it open, and you know the tree is 10 years old. If they are 100, they are 200 years old. If they are 166, they are 166 years old. Was the tree. But these pollinated trees are often hollow on the inside. So there are no rings, there's just nothing. There's emptiness and void. And so we can't count the rings, and because we can't count the rings, we cannot count the years that tree has aged. So it's harder to determine the age of pollinated trees. In Epping Forest in Greater London, the UK, the trees are pollinated until the late 19th century. First you have a point, there's more light coming. If the crown is away and the crown, there's a lot of shadow underneath the crown of a tree, and if the crown is cutted, there's more light onto the ground, and there can live more animals, more species, more plants on the ground because more light is coming to the ground. So, in Epping Forest in Greater London, in the UK, the trees are pollinated until the late 19th century, as it was then stopped to pollinate the trees, leading to that the new springing shoots develop into trunk-sized branches. Here the pollarding, or more precisely onset pollarding, and then the neglecting of it caused even less light to come to the ground. The last exercise, but we don't know what exercise is, we're just going with the hands over the middle part of the arm to relax the extension of the top muscle. So, Epping Forest is in Greater London, it's in the United Kingdom, and until 1850 or something, there the trees were pollinated, so the crown was cutted, but it was stopped because the owner had changed. And then these new branches had grown to trunk-sized branches, and now there's even less light coming to the ground. So these little branches had come, after 8 to 15 years, had their size for fencing and boat construction material, but now 150 years later, they are big branches and they are trees on top of trees basically, and they are very dense now and there's very little light coming to the ground. So the opposite of normally happening with pollarding. Last thing, maybe most important thing to pollarding. Not all trees are suitable for pollarding. So 2 things are important to take away from this. The first thing is, before we don't know what fodder is, we're not going to feed fodder to any animals. And second thing is, not all trees are suitable for pollarding. So we're not going out there and pollarding trees, and we're not feeding that pollinated material as fodder to animals. I thank you very much, and I'll next time.